All right, a bunch of you have been asking for this video for a while now, so I figured it's finally time to make it. Just kidding. Like 3 people have asked for this over the last 3 or 4 years, or however old this channel is. But I'm out of ideas for content, and it's winter right now, and it's like 35 degrees outside, so I can't ride. Well, I mean, I can, but it wouldn't be fun. So here it is. Let's walk through my Speed Twin setup. First off, it's a 2021 Triumph Speed Twin 1200, though the 2021 is before they had the 900 and 1200 designation. Before it was the Street Twin and then the Speed Twin. The Street Twin was the 900, the Speed Twin was the 1200. And it is the 2020 body style and not Euro 5. I think Triumph had, like when they were shipping the Speed Twins during early 2021, they were still the 2020 body style and model year until like halfway through the year, and then they started shipping the newer Euro 5 models. I was not aware of that at the time. I just liked the bike and bought it. But I'm glad I did because I don't have to deal with the Euro 5 stuff. And I like the front suspension a lot more. All right, first up, and probably the most obvious, is the exhaust. I didn't mind the factory exhaust after a while. When I first bought the bike, I didn't like it at all. But after a few months of riding it, I really liked the way that it sounded. And they didn't look that bad. But I really liked the Brat tracker style exhaust, and I wanted it to be a little bit louder, so I went with the British Customs Turnout exhaust. They're just slip-on tips, super easy to install. They sound awesome. I have a whole video on my first impressions and the install and the before and after, but they're pretty reasonably priced. They're like $400 or $500 if I remember right, and they look awesome. They sound great, and I really like them. Next up is the wheels. I get asked about these wheels pretty often, actually. This is just a preference thing, and also kind of out of necessity. I bent the factory wheels on this bike pretty badly, and they needed to be replaced, and I didn't really like the factory wheels to begin with. I didn't think they really matched the retro vibe, so I wanted to go with spoked wheels, and a friend of mine had these wheels on his Speed Twin, but he had gotten rid of his Speed Twin, so he was selling these separately, so I just picked them up from him. They're Canyon motorcycle custom wheels. They're a direct swap. The only downside to them is that they are tubed because they're spoked, so I no longer have the benefit of tubeless wheels and tires. So if I get a flat tire, it's a bummer for me, but other than that, they're awesome. They're a little bit heavier and a little bit harder to take care of because of all the spokes. They're hard to clean and stuff. But they look awesome. I also didn't ever really notice any performance change in handling or anything like that. The next one's kind of a boring one. It's just a Radiator Guard. I don't even remember where I got it. I ride on a lot of back roads that have a lot of debris on the road that gets kicked up into the radiator, and I was getting a lot of bent fins on my radiator, so I wanted to get a Radiator Guard to help protect it a little bit better. Nothing special. Next up is the knee grips. They're just Triumph knee grips that I got from Triumph. I really like the way they look. I don't know that I really use them that much for what they're for, but I just think they look cool. Makes me look super fast. Next we have the black engine badges. From the factory, it comes with these like brushed stainless or aluminum badges that I didn't really like, but luckily Triumph makes these alternative ones that blend in a lot better with the black of the engine. So I swapped those out pretty quick, like immediately. I don't even remember how much they are, but they're not terribly expensive, and it's a super easy install, but nothing fancy there. Okay, levers. These are C3 adjustable racing levers. I kept the factory silver levers on this bike for a long time. I actually just recently changed these out because I did a ride with my buddy who has a Royal Enfield, and he changed his levers to like black no-name racing adjustable levers, and I really liked the way that they felt, so I figured I'd give them a shot on my Speed Twin, and it took me a while to get used to them. I know there's like a bunch of companies that make these. I really wanted like nice racing levers that were just black, no logo, no engraving, no nothing, and these are that, and they're the only ones I could find that fit the Speed Twin that didn't have any logo or anything like that on them, and that like looked nice. So I picked them up. They shipped from like Australia or something. They're really nice. They were kind of a pain to install, but they work really well. It took me a few rides to get used to at least the clutch, but I like the adjustability. I really like the way that they look. It took me a while to get used to the way that they look on the bike, but now that I am, I'm really glad I got them. This again is just like a preference thing. I'm not a fast enough rider for these to like make a difference in my shifting speed or the finger position of my braking hand or anything like that. I just think they look really cool and they feel really nice. Mirrors. This was one of the first things I did when I got the bike. I hated the factory mirrors. They're those like big Mickey Mouse mirrors. And I knew immediately I wanted to do, before I even picked up the bike, I knew I wanted to do bar end mirrors, and I wanted them to go underneath, and I wanted them to be pretty small. So I got these MotoGadget MView Spy mirrors. They're the smallest circular ones that they make, and they actually work really well. Like, I wasn't sure how much field of view I was going to lose by going to such a small mirror and mounting it so low. I didn't know if they would basically become useless and they would just be there for legal reasons. But they work really well. It takes a little bit to like get used to it and know that you have to like move your arm sometimes to be able to see in certain spots in the mirror and stuff like that. But they work fine. They're very clear. The field of view is fine. They don't vibrate too bad. The Speed Twin doesn't vibrate too bad to begin with. And then that doesn't really translate to the end of the bars, so you don't get a lot of that vibration in the mirror anyway. But these, a lot of times, like the smaller mirrors vibrate really bad and you can't see anything out of them anyways. These, that's not the case. They work really well. These are really nice mirrors. They're also very popular, so I'm sure a lot of you already know that. And MotoGadget makes a whole slew of different styles and sizes and stuff like that. So if you want a nice new mirror but you don't want the little tiny circle, they make teardrops, they make all kinds of stuff. Clock faces. I get asked about my clock faces a lot, mostly because most of my videos are POV videos and that's what you see. These are the Arton Works vintage racing clock faces. You basically open up your clocks, pull the factory clock faces out, put the new ones in, close it all back up again, and you're good to go. It's a little bit of a pain because you have to pull the clocks off the bike and all that stuff. And it's a little bit scary because it's still analog, so you got to pull the needles out and do all that stuff, but it's totally worth it. The factory clock faces are a jumbled mess. They're really hard to read, especially if you're just glancing down at them. These ones are really clean. They're really simple. They're really easy to read at a glance, and they're not really distracting when you're on the bike. I personally like them. Some people think it's like too dark, too simple, so they, you don't see them as well. To me, it's totally fine. I love them. I also had an Arton Works bezel cover over the clocks for a while that was black, and it was basically you pull out that little screw in the middle, put this piece of metal on top that covers your entire like clock thing, bezel, and then screw back in. But over time, especially after my trip to Colorado where we drove through a lot of rain and stuff, the anodizing on the metal started to discolor, and so it wasn't really black anymore. It was more of like a purple, and I didn't really like it, so I pulled it off. I actually reached out to Arton Works about it and was like, hey, just so you know this is happening, and they were like, cool, thanks for letting us know. So I'm not sure about Arton Works' like customer service or anything like that, but I wasn't too bummed about it. It turns out I actually like the silver a little bit more anyway because it looks more vintage, and you can see the Triumph logo, which is a beautiful logo. Everybody loves the Triumph logo. My phone mount, it's just a Quadlock, but I get asked about it a lot because it is centered and it looks really sleek, which most Quadlocks don't, because they're mounted to your bars via a clamp that has an articulating arm on it, or a swiveling arm, I should say. So it sits up high off your bars, and it's kind of like clumsy a little bit. And that's what I had on this bike for a long time with the vibration dampener, so I don't have to buy a new phone every 6 weeks, and the wireless charger, so I don't have to run a cable to my phone. But then I found the bar clamp from Thornton 100. They make a specific top clamp for your handlebars that has the Quadlock mount integrated into it. So you just replace the top clamp of your handlebars and then you mount the Quadlock directly to the top clamp instead of having to have the bar clamp, the plastic Quadlock bar clamp. So you're eliminating like 2 or 3 inches of like height. The only downside to this setup is that you cannot tilt your phone once it's mounted. So like whatever angle your risers are at and your bar clamps, that's where your phone's gonna sit. Unless you put an articulating arm on there, then you can offset it or, you know, tilt it, do whatever you want to do with it. But if you mount it the way I did, which is I wanted it to be as low as possible and out of the way of my clocks and out of my face, it's just there. It's low enough to where I sit, if I look down at my phone, you know, it's at a fine angle and I never have problems with glare or anything like that. Also, I live in Washington, so we don't get a lot of direct sunlight, but you know, I've never had a problem with it like that. I prefer it to the articulating arm or, you know, swiveling arm. I really like this setup. I wanted it to be sleek. I wanted it to be clean. I don't want all this stuff hanging off my bars. So it works really well for me. It's not cheap. I want to say those top clamps are like 150 bucks. They do CNC everything themselves, I believe. Maybe not. No, there's no way. They got to be outsourcing it. I don't know. But they're not cheap. Thornton 100 is notorious for not being cheap, but it is really nice stuff. So there's a solution there if you're trying to get rid of the Quadlock bar articulating arm, swivel arm thing. Luggage. This might be a little bit of a tangent. I'm using the Unigarage suede panniers with the brackets. I have 2 of them, one for each side of the bike, obviously. They also make a waxed canvas version of this, and it comes in a couple of different colors and 2 sizes. This is the smaller of the 2. When I bought these, there was only the 1 size. Now there's 2. I wish I had the bigger size because these are like 16, 17 liters or something. Not very big. Can't fit a whole lot in them. Though I bought them for my trip to Colorado, where I spent 9 days riding around the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, and they worked fine. I used packing cubes and packed conservatively and fit everything I needed in the bags and my backpack. So they did what I wanted them to do. And I will say that the material, it's a suede leather, very nice. Unigarage is a Italian company, I think, so fancy Italian leather. The hardware, like the buckle strap, is riveted to the leather to keep it in place, and the rivet broke somehow recently. I'm not sure how. It doesn't seem to affect the effectiveness of the buckle strap, but it did break, which is kind of disappointing because these bags are like $500 a piece. So I kind of want them to be like generational, like heirloom bags. The mounting hardware is totally fine on the Speed Twin. It works, it's minimal. When the bags aren't on the bike, I don't mind the way it looks. I know there's like the SW Motex and like a million other luggage options for the Speed Twin, but I wanted to keep the bags that like retro style to match the bike. I think like it kind of looks weird when you put like modern looking luggage on a vintage looking bike. So I want, the whole point of the bike is to look retro, so keeping the luggage in that vein. Plus I'm a hipster, so I mean, I'm gonna go with the hipster option. But I will say I also have a Unigarage bag on my Scrambler. It's their waterproof polyurethane, plastic, whatever bag, the roll top bag. It's just like these, but it's made of plastic, so it's waterproof. And on the Scrambler, they are terrible. This whole mounting system is terrible. It's fine when you're on road. Like if you're on pavement, totally fine. The vibration of the bike seems to be fine. But the second you go off-road and you hit any kind of uneven road, the weight of the bag just obliterates the mounting system. And that's like, you know, with my Scrambler, I have like a bottle of water, some snacks, some ibuprofen, and a hoodie in this bag. And you know, the weight of the bag, the back plate that mounts to the mounting bracket that mounts to the bar on the bike is inside the bag, and it's what basically clamps the or screws the mounting bracket onto the the bag, that's what's holding the bag on the bike. So it's made of plastic. It's basically just a big plastic sheet with screws in it. And the weight of the bag, as you're hitting these bumps, pulls this plastic plate down from the top. So it will snap and then becomes a sharp plastic plate inside of your bag, which then pokes holes in your bag and makes it it's not unusable, it's basically unusable, and definitely not waterproof anymore. And for a $300 bag, or $250, $300 bag, however expensive it is, for that particular one, I was like super disappointed with how poorly that was designed. Now, I know that they're just reusing the same mounting solution as all of their other bags so that they don't have to like have this specialized mounting bracket for this one bag, but it's for a scrambler. People are going to use it off-road, I would think. So the fact that I've replaced that back plate. Thankfully you can buy just the back plate. I've replaced that back plate twice, thinking maybe I just got a fluke or I've just put too much weight in it, and so I continually take weight out of it when I'm out on the trail, and they still break. So it's a terrible bag. These are fine because they never see anything but the road. So I don't have any of the same issues with the mounting. You can put as much weight as you want in them. Obviously you're not going to put like cast iron in them or anything like that, so they'll be fine. But for the most part, these bags have been great, other than little things here and there with not being able to get to the key to lock them to your bike, to get the key to the keyhole to lock them to your bike very easily. So you just take them off your bike because otherwise somebody will steal them. Hopefully not, but maybe. And the rivets popping out on the buckle strap. Other than that, they're great. But they are very expensive and really function the same as any other pannier, probably less so. But if you want to look like a hipster and you want to have that like cool Italian leather vintage vibe, then there you go. You can have $1,200 after shipping and tax in panniers. Tail tidy. This is the British Customs Speed Twin tail tidy. Nothing special about it. Not hard to install. I think I did an install video on this. Maybe not. If I did, I'll link it. I don't remember. It's nothing special. I just wanted the most low-key, minimalistic plate holder that I could get that would use the factory LED light, so I didn't have to mess with any electronics or do any wire splicing or anything like that. And this does that, and it's reasonably priced. British Customs does a great job with their stuff. Suspension. This is the thing with the Speed Twins. People do not like the factory suspension from the Speed Twins. I'm an American, under 200 pounds, but close. So I'm bigger than the average European, I would say, stereotypically. So I would say that it's reasonable to assume that the factory suspension was not built for my body type or designed for my body type. And I will say that the factory suspension for such an expensive bike is kind of cheap feeling. I wouldn't say that I'm a good enough rider to notice whether or not it affects my ride that much or the comfortability of the ride. And I kind of rode with that philosophy for a long time. People were saying, get the Ohlins, do the front suspension, it'll change your life. You'll be able to ride that bike a lot harder and hit those twisties a lot better and feel a lot more confident on the bike. And I just kind of always told myself, like, I'm not a good enough rider to spend $2,000-$3,000 on suspension for a bike that I'm never going to outride. And then I rode my friend's Speed Twin with the suspension done and realized that it was probably worth it. So on the front end, I just did cartridges. I didn't want to do the whole fork swap thing with the speed triples or whatever, however people do that. I wanted to keep the retro fork covers and keep the black forks and keep them looking like the retro, even though they're upside down forks. So I just went with the Nitron cartridges, the TVT adjustable cartridges I had them installed by Triumph in Seattle because I don't even want to mess with fork oil and doing all that stuff. It seems like such a pain. And so I needed to get a service done on it anyway. So I brought them the parts and said, please help me. And they did it. And it's done. On the rear, I have the Ohlins Blackline adjustable reservoir shocks. It's like the top of the line Ohlins shocks that you can get for this bike. I wanted them to be black. I didn't want the yellow or the gold Ohlins colors. So I had to go with the Blackline. I don't even know if they make them anymore. They're not cheap, very expensive actually. And again, I wasn't sure that Ohlins is a racing shocks company. So if you're going for comfortability and like a smooth ride, I'm not sure that these are gonna give you that, but they do, I will say they do make the bike feel a whole lot more planted. I also had my suspension professionally tuned for me. I figured if I'm gonna spend all that money on suspension, I might as well get it tuned so that I can get the most out of it, or at least, you know, be set up for success. I've never taken this bike to the track or done anything that you haven't already seen in one of my videos. So, you know, I'm not the most spirited rider. I have never ridden a motorcycle on the track. You know, I'm not dragging knee, I'm not doing any of that stuff. So I'm not pushing this bike to its absolute limit, and I'm definitely not pushing the suspension to the limit. But I will say that in some of those tight, twisty roads that I ride, this suspension does feel a lot more planted. And I like the way that it looks. It looks nicer than the factory suspension in my opinion. And I like the ability to adjust if I need to, or if I, you know, go on Atkins or Weight Watchers and lose a bunch of weight, I can adjust my suspension for that so that, you know, I'm still set up for success. Is it worth spending that amount of money on suspension? I will say in my experience, I did not notice enough of a difference to justify that kind of money. Now, if I was on the track or if I was a much better rider, maybe I could see that being a thing. Suspension really is what makes most bikes, what makes or breaks most bikes. But for my riding style and the way that I ride and how good of a rider I am or not, I would say that it did not make a $3,000 difference in the ride. It does feel better, but was it worth $3,000? I don't know. To be determined, maybe. But I also am not pushing the bike. So anyway, there we go. Suspension. Should you do it? If you have Triumph money, sure, do it. I think that's it. I feel like there's more than that. I gotta be missing something. I feel like I've spent so much money on this motorcycle. Well, yeah, I guess that's it. Ducati throttle spacer, to get rid of the throttle slop. That makes a huge difference, and it's like 30 bucks. Yeah, I guess that's it. Thanks for hanging out.